Gen Con 2023 was great. A lot of great games, a lot of fun, a lot of great people. But it wasn't perfect. We didn't find that one perfect game that scratched every gamer's itch. Until Saturday night, when we met Joe Meade and played his game, Omens of Destiny. And I'm so happy and been waiting for a long time to have Joe with us today. Joe, how you doing?
I'm doing great, guys. I appreciate you having me.
And also joining us today is Jason. Frequent viewers of the G3 Boardroom see Jason in everything else we do. Usually it's just me doing these inside board games, but Jason could not be held out of this discussion with Joe.
He needed somebody to blame. Here I am.
So, Joe, where are you joining us from tonight?
I'm in Eastern Kentucky, and most people probably recognize that from the accent, but yeah, Eastern Kentucky.
Jason and I were talking about the other day, I could have swore you were from Texas.
Yeah, I get that a lot. Different phone calls. You know, people say, "Well, you're definitely from the South." Now, where is it? So, yeah, I'm in Eastern Kentucky, born and raised Eastern Kentucky.
I was really afraid you were a Cowboys fan. That's where the Texas thing came from. Yeah.
Man, come on, let's don't start this out like this. Please tell me he's not. Right?
Yeah, I would have been awkward right from the get-go.
Yeah, that would have gone badly.
Are you a board game designer full time, or is this something that you do part time? And it's really I don't want to diminish. I know that even part time board game designers, it's really they have two full-time jobs. You know, they've got their day gig and they've got this. But is this, just your focus, or do you do something kind of else during the day?
Yeah. So yeah, this is just a side hustle, if you will, for me. But honestly, it's really not a hustle. It's a labor of love, right? This is my passion. Been an avid gamer, role player for many years. And wrote my own role-playing game, and then as a natural progression of things, at some point along the line, kind of got drawn and pulled into the board gaming world, and thought, I'd make my own. There's an interesting story actually how that came into being. The short answer is this is certainly not my full-time job. I do this on the side, and I work in the medical industry, actually in the information technology side of imaging right now, and have been for 32 years now. So I still have a full-time job doing that. And then this is what I do when I'm not doing that job. As you said, it is a job of its own. It's very time intensive, labor intensive, but this is what I enjoy. It is a passion for me, but it's a labor of love, and not my full-time job. That would be great if it were to be able to come to that. But at this point, this is something I do on the side. Yeah.
I mean, that 9 to 5 for most people is just a means to an end.
It really is. I mean, you got to do what you got to do, right?
You're into a lot of other creative things, though.
I do.
Writing, other game design. Tell me a little bit about like the first kind of creative outlet that you got into.
Sure.
Because Omens of Destiny is the most recent, and I know the Mystic Forces. That's an RPG, right?
It is. Yep. Exactly. Yep.
Okay, and then we were talking before, and you had mentioned some things that you have authored. Where did that come in?
Yeah, so probably, I guess where things would start would be from a very young age. I always enjoyed storytelling, right? Listening to stories, telling stories, making up stories. And I always liked to write stories, especially short stories. And then at some point along the way, I kind of decided I wanted to be better at it, right? So I actually took a writing course through Long Ridge Writers Group and got through that. Played role-playing games probably since I was about 12 years old. I had one of my older brothers was in the military. Yeah, so he was playing AD&D. So when he came in on leave one time and he was close to being discharged, he brought this hoard of books, right? And it was Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. So he brings all of that in. And, I love storytelling, and I love the whole fantasy genre and cartoon world of, escaping into the fantasy world. And when I saw this and realized kind of what it was, right? And how I realized was my older brother, again, I was probably 12 years old at the time. Me and a couple of my cousins, he said he was going to run us through an adventure. An adventure? Sounds great. Let's do this. How does this work? So he kind of created some characters for us and quickly pulled us all together. And we had this little session. And honestly, that is by far the biggest I guess, change and driving force for everything that I've done since then. So he took us on that session. It may have lasted an hour, honestly, of him running us through this little adventure scenario, but the interaction and to hear him get so into character, and then the things that happened, and I saw the immediate consequences of me being a little overzealous with what my character was going to do and the consequences in the game, and I was blown away, and I was just hooked, to be honest with you. So it was probably a year or two later, he gets out of the military and he goes on with his regular life, and he's kind of moved on. His military buddies are gone. He gives me his stash of Advanced Dungeons and Dragons. I got this huge stack of books, and I'm like, I want to play this. I want to learn how to do that. I want to be a dungeon master. So, man, I dove in and I read those books, pulled some of my cousins and neighbors together, and we started playing Dungeons and Dragons. And I actually flipped from the AD&D and found in his stash of things the Red Box edition of Dungeons and Dragons. And so, long story short, I started running the adventures, run out of material, and didn't have a lot of money back in the day. So I started writing my own adventures. And so that kind of really was my biggest start into the actual gaming world, and not just writing short stories and telling stories, but actually getting into the gaming world. Played a lot of different RPGs over the years. And then at one point along the line, I was kind of talking to some friends. I was like, there's always things about RPGs and that I don't necessarily like. So maybe I'll write my own and just kind of do it the way that I want to do it, and kind of put the things that I really like in it. Honestly, my first stab was paying homage to the Wheel of Time series. And so I kind of did that. And then after a while, I was like, you know what? I've put so much work into this. I want to make this my own world. So then I kind of broke it off and made things unique, and really started coming up with some ideas for my own unique role-playing game. And then that became Mystic Forces. And so that was my first big project, was writing that full-length RPG.
What's your, I know Jason, you can tell everyone what your favorite character is always when you want to be in like an RPG. And I'm wondering what Joe's favorite type of character is.
Well, it's kind of hard for me to say. I enjoy switching it up and playing a little bit of everything, right? I tend to gravitate more to the magic users, right? Always, fascinated by the whole mystical side of the world and the magic, and to being able to pull forth and conjure the exceptional things that's beyond the norm, right? But, I often enjoy playing the hack and slash too, the big barbarians. I like sometimes playing a rogue, sneaking around. So honestly, for me, I like mixing it up, trying a little bit of everything.
I always like to be sneaky. Jason, you have something that you pretty much gravitate to all the time.
I do. I don't know if you know it, but yeah. I always play as a paladin type or a defender type or the tanky type.
I do enjoy that.
Come hit me. The taunting type, and so I run the bulwark, and you all file in behind me, and and it's funny because I gravitate to it in every game that I play, and I'm not going to tell you what I do for a living, but it's kind of the same thing.
Oh, wow.
So I run defense all the time.
I think most of us do tend to gravitate toward one particular type or play style. And again, to me, it's more of the magic class. But honestly, though, I do kind of dive into a little bit of everything. And I honestly enjoy GMing or DMing a lot more than I do playing. So a little different than most folks. A lot of times you got some folks that you got to kind of coax them into DMing or GMing because they want to play, right? I want to chance to play. Me, I'm still playing. It's just a different role. And that's the role that I enjoy. So I enjoy playing every now and then. But honestly, if I could only pick one side of the table to be on for RPGs, I'm going to be the game master.
That's fair.
I like the creation. I like the look on people's faces when they are challenged by something that I wrote and created, and see the smiles if they enjoy something that I created. To me, that's the biggest joy in the gaming for me is to see that look. Somebody's enjoying something that I came up with, and again, that's kind of what Mystic Forces came into being. Produced, wrote some adventure modules for it, and alchemy expansion. Later, as you mentioned, the writing, I wrote a book of short stories. I kind of went back to my roots, and I actually wrote a book of short stories called Troves of Fantasy, and self-published that. Yep, there's 10 short stories in there. And then the board gaming came into being. It was honestly at Origins. You guys are probably familiar with that. And so I was there one year. This has been 5-6 years ago now.
Okay.
And I was doing sessions of Mystic Forces, and I was noticing that there wasn't a lot of variation in the RPGs, and just not nearly as many people as I was used to seeing in the RPG halls. I think it's picked back up again since then, but at that time the numbers were kind of down, and we were talking, me and some friends, and he's like, it seems like the hottest thing is the board games. That's what everybody's about. Looking at the board game libraries and the number of board game events that's going on. And so one of them just kind of in jest, honestly, looked at me and said, "That's what you need to do, Joe. You need to write a board game. That's where it's at, apparently." And I said, maybe I will. And kind of honestly, that was the start of it. I hadn't really been big into the board gaming world other than, just the normal things that a lot of folks are when they're growing up, playing Risk and Clue and Monopoly and all that sort of thing. But I hadn't really got into the board game world at all until I decided to make my own. And honestly, I didn't even dive into it then until I was probably 2 years into creating mine. Oddly enough, the reason is because I didn't want to be influenced. Because some other folks like, you need to play every board game you can get your hands on so you can see how they work and see what's out there and you know what to do. You know what? I would really rather not, because I don't want to subconsciously even be influenced by other games that are out there. So I'm just going to make a game the way that I think it should work. Kind of going back to how I started my RPG, something that I think's fun, a style that works for me. I kind of want to have that RPG story-driven flavor. I like character building and questing and combat. And so all the things that are fun to me, I'm going to figure out a way to make that work in my own head. And once I kind of get a concrete ideal down, then I'll visit some games or start playing games and see how mine stacks up and possibly tweak some things if I see that, these are the things that are definitely hot and I need that concept, maybe. But honestly, I just didn't want to be influenced by other games. And so I didn't. And I was probably 2 years into the creation of my game and had what still is actually pretty much the final path. Some things have been tweaked, but the game honestly hasn't changed a lot in concept from the beginning. And then I started playing a lot of games, and now I'm kind of really addicted. I'm into the board game worlds and things. And I got a huge bookshelf full of games, and I love learning new games, playing new games. I've played a lot of them over the last few years. So I'm about 5 years in at this point of working on Omens of Destiny, from conception to where I'm at now. About 5 years.
Okay.
It's kind of funny what you said, that you have this shelf of games now. One of our other guys on the channel who you've met, who's Dave. Dave has a large selection of games, and I used to think, I'm like, oh man, this is an amazing amount of games. And we used to even say on the channel, if there's something you want us to play, let us know, because we probably got it. And then I met this other guy. His name's Alex, and I went down into his basement, and it was like, holy cow! It's like, now that
your eyes were opened, huh?
It's like I don't know how much money worth. I don't know what the value is of all the games down there, but it's for lack of a better term, it's a gaming crypt. It's just full of games, and it's amazing. So Omens of Destiny, is that in the same universe as Mystic Forces, or
it is actually. So, I thought, why reinvent the wheel totally, right? And if I'm going to write a board game, I've spent years and years, because the first edition of Mystic Forces came out in 2000. And then in 2015 is when I actually released the second edition, revised a few things, added a couple races, expounded on it. And so I had this totally unique world, right? So all the races and everything it's high fantasy. So you don't see any races. So there's no humans, dwarves, elves. All of the races in Mystic Forces are unique to my world. I already had the whole backstory for how the world came into being, how the magic works and the reason behind it and the races, all this stuff. So I thought, you know what? I've got a pretty rich background of information and world building already done. Why not take advantage of that? And I want to use the same world, but use that as sort of the backdrop and setting for my board game. And that's what I did. And actually decided to move back about 350 years in the timeline. So some of the cities and things that you will see in Omens of Destiny are now destroyed in the full RPG world. Some wars happened and they're destroyed. And then there's actually some new cities and developments that you'll see if you play the full RPG that aren't yet created when you look at the map of the Elabrian realm, which is the main setting where Omens of Destiny takes place. But the short answer to your question is absolutely, it does come straight out of the Mystic Forces world, which is set on, it's a planet known as Arathar. And that's where everything draws from on the board game. It's the world of Mystic Forces, basically.
Fantastic.
It's interesting that you went back to do like a prequel for your for your board game. I'm not sure how often that happens. So it's it just kind of felt right to me, honestly. And the world at that point wasn't quite as developed, so it kind of made it a little easier, I guess, to fit the theme and all the stuff that I wanted to put on the realm, and not have so many cities and stuff and limit options. And I thought, well, a good way to do that might be to back up before the Elabrian realm became so populated. So let's back up in time. Also, there was a time when it was
really chaotic and certain events were happening, and I'm kind of playing off those into the board game. Now, obviously, for the board game's sake, it doesn't read like the RPG, though it is a bit wordy. It's nothing like the RPG. So there's a lot that if you've not played the RPG, there's hints of things and just vaguely mention things. But don't go too deep into it. But it's enough that you can definitely tell there's a lot more going on behind the scenes. This is clearly part of a bigger story, and you definitely get that feel, I believe, as you read the cards in the game, the event cards, which act sort of like virtual GMs, as well as some of the blurb that's in the rule book. I think it lends itself to letting the player know, yeah, there's a world going on here where a lot of stuff's happening. And then for those people that have happened to play the RPG, it's going to be one of those, I know exactly what caused this. I know what this is about, so it's kind of fun for the people that actually played both, to see how they make those connections and realize what inspiration it was all drawn from.
Did you do all the writing for the cards and the flavor text like in the rules?
Yeah, I did. So that's all me. Yep.
Do you mind if I read the very first couple sentences from the rule book?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay, I'm going to try to do this justice.
All right.
A heavy fog rolls across the swamp's stagnant surface, breaking onto the shore like a diseased wave. Emerald blades of grass wilt and fall, now blackened and weeping with pungent slime. The land moans in protest against the crushing assault of evil incarnate. That's some good stuff.
Good deal. I'm glad you like it. Yeah, that's
I hate reading rule books, but I enjoy reading the prose that's in your, and there's more, but I mean, just that setting the tone right out of the gate, is very engaging.
Awesome.
To say the least.
I love that feedback, and that's what I want to hear, right? So, yeah, that's just kind of the style that I like to write in, and I wanted it to be engaging. I wanted to try to immerse you into the world as quickly as possible without boring with a huge story. So, I tried to make it as impactful as I could without being too wordy. So I'm glad that you appreciate that. That was certainly my goal, was to give you a taste of the world, set the tone for how dark and how serious the nature of events are that you're going to be participating in. And that's exactly what I wanted to do, was to engage the reader, because as you're learning the rules of the book, again, I wanted you to feel like that you were stepping into a world that you could see that there's some clear world building going on here.
Yeah, and it is a big world, and that's sort of what I was trying to get at in my introduction is all the fun games we played at Gen Con were great, and we laughed and we had a lot of fun, but when we played this game, it was stepping into a world, and it was like, whoa, this is a big game.
Nice.
And I don't mean that as like overwhelming, or you need physically a huge table, or it's going to take you 8 hours to go through an adventure. But it just seemed like a very big, substantial game that does have all the big elements.
That's definitely what I was going for. I wanted to make it big enough that it had a lot of depth, really, a lot of replayability, something that you're not going to play 2, 3, 4 times and then, well, we've seen everything there is to see, there's nothing more to explore. There's a lot of depth, right? And it's designed so that you can just play the beginner quest over and over, or play some of the blitz quest, and even then, though, because of the nature of the event decks, which are randomized, it's going to be a different experience each time. But I've also designed it to be played in campaign mode, right, which is going to tell a story. And we can get into more of that if you want, but there's definitely a lot of story. So there's actually 3 separate storylines that form 12 what I call storyline main quests. There's different types of main quests. A lot of them are storyline. They can be played as one-off blitz quests, or they can chain together in campaign play, to where, as you keep what you've earned, it's legacy play, so that you just keep building and working your way toward those big elite quests and getting in, unlocking new areas that if you wander into as a beginner, you're probably not going to last very long. But the game, I wanted it to make it to where you could grow with it, right? So as your character grows, there's other areas that you can then move and explore. And so honestly, even for me, I've played it a lot. This game has been play tested quite a bit. Me and others, and I might be a little biased, but I enjoy playing it. I've got some buddies that have helped me play test a lot over the years. We still play it sometimes not just to get playtest results, but because that's what we want to do on game night. They'll come over and we'll talk about what to do. And, Omens of Destiny is always one of the options because, frankly, we just enjoy playing it. So that's obviously one of the big litmus tests to a game, if it's good or not, right? Do you actually enjoy playing it? I guess it would be a shame if I didn't enjoy playing my own game. But I say all that to say, yes, it is a deep world. There's a lot going on, but it's not, again, like you said, I don't think too overwhelming. And I designed it that way so that it was meant to kind of pull you along and give plenty of depth and room to grow, but it doesn't shove it all down your throat at once, if that makes sense.
Right.
I just wanted to interject something here real quick. When we were playing at Gen Con, I just remembered this when Joe said, oh, there's some places that you wander into as a new player, they're probably not going to go your way. I seem to remember, we sat down and we're interested in exploring pretty much anything we can do, no matter what the consequences are. Right. And there was some kind of quest, and I'm like, well, let's go over here. And I remember Joe being like, yeah, that would be challenging for you at this point. I'm like, oh, no, it might be too challenging. I'm like, are you saying I shouldn't do that yet?
Right.
Yep. So and it is very sandboxy, too. So that's one of the things I wanted to do was, the quests are kind of linear, but I wrote them in a way that, honestly, you can pick and choose on a lot of them, the order in which you do things. Now, sometimes the order is dictated, but the sandbox portion comes in as this. You've got a list of main objectives that you need to meet, and you're always racing against the corruption taking over the realm. So you got to watch about how many events you trigger, because triggering an event has a chance to spawn a corruption, and if 5 spawn, that represents that the realm has been overrun, and that's your lose condition. But while you're doing that, if you've been lucky or fortunate enough or skilled enough to avoid allowing too much corruption to spawn, you can always take some little sidebars, go on an extra side quest. Maybe you're the guy that likes to say, you know what, we're playing in campaign mode, and I know it's only going to get harder from here. Yes, we could rush north and get to this city and complete this last main objective, but we're so close to this area over here. Let's spend just a little bit more time. If we go over here, I want to see what's in this vendor market, or I want to go over here and earn a little more advancement so that I'm in better shape when we step into the next one. You can do all those things, right? So that, to me, is one of the cool things, is that it is kind of a sandbox.
There's a lot of options. We're talking about story mode. We're talking about campaigns. Give people a sense of what's a game session. How long are the game sessions before you come to like a natural break? I understand that you play a campaign game, you could go for a long time,
right,
but what's
sure.
Take me through like a gaming session from
so,
your experience.
All right, so there's 2 intro quests that come with the game, and they're meant to be quicker and faster to kind of introduce you to the game. They're designed to give you a sort of a taste of a lot of the different aspects of the game, but not require too much involvement, right? So you can kind of get in and get out. Usually about an hour. And it depends. I have finished them in 45 minutes. Sometimes they're an hour and a half, but usually about an hour for the intro quests.
Okay.
Now, the full quests, which there's quite a few of them. So there's 12 storyline quests and 6 blitz quests. Mm-hmm. All of those are full main quests. Those, on average, are going to run you around 3 hours, once you really know what you're doing. Sometimes a little quicker and sometimes a little longer, right? It depends, too. A little bit of luck comes into play. And also, how long do you want to spend exploring things that are not strictly part of your objectives, right? So if you're one of those people that really likes to explore and take advantage of every avenue, you may spend 4 to 5 hours on a single main quest. But on average, 3 hours, I'd say.
Okay, well, that's good. I think that just so people know that there's kind of a wide range. It could be as short as 45 minutes if you want it, or it could be as longer, as a whole afternoon.
Absolutely.
Getting into it, having fun, and checking things out and exploring the world, things like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
You did mention that if you're lucky enough or skilled enough, for fans of the channel, and this as well, Joe, we are neither lucky nor skilled. So how, if you were to die in Omens of Destiny, if your player is eliminated, are you permanently out, or can you describe to us what it would take for me to recover from my most certain
bad choices?
So if you're the guy that likes to rush into combat unprepared and you get yourself or the group killed, there are some serious consequences, but it's not an immediate end of the game. Now, it can usher in the end game. And what I mean by that is this. So on almost every main quest, there's some blitz quests that switch things up a little bit and make them interesting. But on most every main quest, there's an area of the overland board, the Labyrinth realm, that's known as the heart of the corruption. That's where things first started to spawn and go bad on this disease that's known as the corruption. And so you'll start with one corruption token already in play on that space, and there's 4 more. So if all 5 get on the board at one time, and there's a few limited ways to cleanse and get rid of them, it's pretty difficult to do, but it is certainly possible to get rid of them. But again, it's hard. So your challenge is to not let all 5 of those corruption tokens hit the board at once. If all 5 do make it onto the board, again, it represents the corruption overtaking the realm, and that's the end game condition. Now, how does those corruptions spawn? Well, there's certain events that can just automatically spawn a corruption. There are also combat scenarios, as you mentioned, that you can either be unlucky or unskilled at and you die. So one of the ways that corruptions spawn is if any given combat event has a death. So it'll be too fast if you got a corruption token for everybody that died, because you can have 4 people playing at once. But for any single combat scenario, when there's 1 or more deaths, so even if just 1 of you die and then the rest of you win, or if it's a full party wipe, for each event, it will spawn a corruption token. So you got to watch about triggering combat and fighting. It's a great way to earn advancement and to do stuff, but you got to be careful, because if anybody dies, it does spawn a new corruption. Also, events, which are at the heart of the game, there's multiple event decks, and there's different areas of the overland board that are represented by each of those decks. As you move into them, you'll draw from different decks depending on the area. And then there's, of course, the always present and dangerous random event deck that can be hit anywhere on the overland board that's not in a dedicated event area. Every time that you trigger an event, which you want to, because that's where the fun's at, right? That's where the side quests get triggered. That's where the miscellaneous events, which can be good or bad, and of course combat trigger. But here's the deal: every time that you trigger an event in Omens of Destiny, you have to roll what's known as the surge die. 5 of those 6 faces represent one of the mystic forces of air, fire, land, spirit, and water, and those gravitate toward the party. Essentially, the mystical energies known as the sixth sense that's within each character is drawing in those magical energies of the mystic forces. If you can get close enough to them, you can try to gain control of them. And once you control a mystic force, you control it for the rest of the game, and it unlocks the magic that you can then begin learning. And so the idea is that 5 of those 6 faces, whenever you trigger an event, you're going to roll that. We're going to either one of the mystic force surges is going to move toward the party a little bit, or one of those 6 faces represents the corruption spawning. So that's how you gain corruption. So you roll that corruption die. If you roll a corruption, it spawns 1. If you die in combat, it spawns 1. So if you die, going back to your question, Jason, if you die in Mystic Forces, you spawn back at an area, virtual area known as camp. You get to basically pick up where you left off. You're out of the combat event, the event's lost. You get to pick up where you left off, but there's a few consequences. Number 1 is you're going to lose all your boons. So boons are a very powerful thing that you can have in the game. They're sort of like blessings from the sort of the heart and soul of the planet itself, known as the Guru Sharan, right? So these boons are sort of like rules overrides. You can only have 5 of them. Any given character can, and you try to optimize those as the game is played through. Some of them are permanent, some of them affect ranged combat, some melee. There's different things. So depending on how you've geared your character and what your play style is, certain boons are going to fit your character a little better. And so one of the big parts of the game mechanics is trying to optimize those boons and getting just the right ones to do what you want to do, and being proficient with armor so you can wear the heavier armor and use the heavier hitting weapons. That may have a penalty, but you've gained the weapon proficiency boon. So now you're good enough with it that you can negate the penalties. And I've got myself just where I want it. And then you die. Well, if you die, you do get to start over. So your health gets reset, your full health, your fatigue goes away. You spawn back at camp, but you lose all of your boons. So those are discarded. You lose those. And it does spawn a corruption. So as long as you didn't already have 4 and somebody dies, the game goes on. But it does usher in the end game because it spawns more corruption. And it makes things more challenging because for those that die, you lose all your boons. So it is a pretty big setback. And it's a little hard to recover from, but it's not necessarily game over when you die either.
So if you're in campaign mode, is it does the campaign end if the 5 corruption comes out, or is it just at each level?
It does, but honestly, here's the thing too. It's your game, so you can play it however you want. Strictly by the rules, it's over, and you would start over. But you know what? Maybe he's like, let's just kind of keep going from here. So we're going to pretend that we didn't die on that because we want to keep going. I want to see the intermediate. I want to see the advanced. I want to get to the elite quest. You can kind of do a reset and play it any way that you want, right? It's your game. You can keep going. But yes, by the true nature of the rules, if you fail, you should be starting back over with the beginner quest of that storyline and build your way back up again. And it's up to you if you want to use the same characters. Of course, the gear is going to be re-randomized that you start with. So yeah, it's a little hardcore. And here's another thing. in the rules, I actually have written down rules for jumping ahead. There's actually a section called jumping ahead so that you can actually advance into a storyline. So maybe you made it all the way up to the advanced of a storyline and you died. Well, you got a couple options, right? You can either just, mulligan, and we'll kind of back up a little bit on that because we want to keep playing and see what would happen. Let's pretend we didn't spawn that corruption. We're going to play on. You could do that. Or if you wanted to maybe try again with new characters, a new composition, but then jump and bypass the beginner, the intermediate, and go straight to advanced, there's rules for doing that so that those that are impatient can kind of get closer to some of that in-game content, see what's in some of those high-level areas without the time commitment. So, yeah.
So that would be unlucky, unskilled, and impatient.
check, and check, right?
Right.
I know you want to talk about mechanics, Jay. Why don't you go ahead?
Just wondering, he's sort of gotten into some of it. I just kind of wanted to get the, let people know, kind of how the gameplay goes.
Sure. Each player is going to have a D12, which is known as your performance die. And that's the meat and potatoes of the tests that you make. You also have a number of attributes. So those attributes that you have are agility, strength, endurance, willpower, intelligence, and sixth sense. So every test that you make in the game is actually going to be driven by one of those attributes. So if you're making a defense, right, you're trying to dodge and evade a creature's attack, or you're attacking, let's say, with a physical weapon, whether it's shooting a bow, swinging a sword, or whatever, those are agility-based actions. So those attack actions are powered by your agility, which, by the way, you can increase your attributes as you play in the game. So it's kind of, again, that RPG feel. You can increase attributes as you play.
Right.
But let's say that your agility is 5, all right, and you're attacking a creature. So since this is an agility-based test for me to attack, we're going to say in this case you're swinging a sword. You always roll your performance die. So you're going to roll that D12. What you roll on the performance die itself is known as the performance of the attack. So let's say that you roll an 8. So you're performing at 8. You add that 8 to your agility of 5 for a result, so you're going to get 13. Now, some weapons are faster, lighter weapons, and they also add bonuses. So you may have a sword that's a really fast sword, a scimitar or something that adds bonuses. So in addition to your agility, you would also add the bonus of the sword. Maybe you've got a big heavy warhammer, though. It hits like a truck. It can stun. It's got special abilities. It can knock back whatever. But some of those slow, hard-hitting weapons have penalties. So those are the things that you would have to take into consideration. So you take the result of your performance die, add the appropriate attribute, and then add or subtract any bonuses or penalties that you may have due to armor that's being worn or it being a slow or a fast weapon, etc. And so, again, you're going to have a performance, and then you're going to have a total test result. You'll compare that total test result against the creature's static defense. If you equal or exceed that number, you've hit them. And then the weapon's got a damage number on it. And then if you're doing a physical attack, the harder you hit, the more damage you're going to do. So your character's strength will add to the damage. So for damage, you take the damage output of the weapon, add your character's strength for the total amount of damage. And so you can have armor on yourself that would mitigate damage that creatures do. A lot of creatures have what's known as natural protection ratings, which is their thick skin or scales that act sort of like your armor. It can mitigate some of the damage. And again, there's lots of variables. And some of them actually depend on how well you perform. So, for example, you may have a weapon that says if you perform at 8 or more, it'll do extra damage, or it'll bypass a creature's natural protection. So in addition to the total value, whether you hit or not, what you actually roll on the face of that D12 can unlock a lot of extra special abilities.
A lot of RPG feel to that, which I like. So this game is going to be coming to Kickstarter.
Yep. March 6th.
March 6th. Okay, so as of the date of this recording, we're about a month out. Maybe 6 weeks out from that. How you feeling about that? How's that going?
I tell you, I don't know for sure. This is my first Kickstarter, by the way. So a lot of it, the process is new to me. So I actually have the pre-launch page up on Kickstarter, right? So there's a link. I've been sharing it on my social media, on my Discord, on my Facebook, and so on. I send out a newsletter every month or two, and so I have a pretty substantial number of people following on the newsletter, so I'm sending that out to those folks, and I do get some interaction on Facebook and X and some of those platforms as well. I have about 103 people following the pre-launch as of right now that have actually visited the Kickstarter page and clicked on the notify me on launch button. So as of right now, about 103. I'm going to be pushing a little harder here soon to start doing actually some more some more advertising and kind of hitting some more routes. And then hopefully folks like yourself here with the G3 Boardroom are going to help me get the word out there. But that's my biggest challenge, right? I don't have a huge social media presence, and honestly don't know a lot about the social media world. I dabble in it, I guess is the best way to say it. So
Right.
For me, the challenge is getting the word out there. I do have, again, over 100 folks already following the Kickstarter, so I'm hoping that translates into backers and that more people see it. And
How many people how many people are you looking for?
oh, geez, man, the more the merrier, right? I don't want to put a limit on it. I would like to see that number at least doubled, though, before launch, if I possibly could, right?
So I know that some people on Kickstarter, they're like, well, this is an all or nothing, or some people are like, well, we want this much for minimum, or,
Yeah. So are you talking about the value, the monetary value that I need for the Kickstarter to make it happen? Or are you talking about number of people backing, or what?
I don't know. I guess number of people. I mean, I don't know how much you want to talk about money. I mean, I guess they'll know when they go to the Kickstarter page, but I don't want to, I know we want to.
I would like to see that number, at least doubled, if not tripled, honestly, to make me feel a little bit better about having a chance to back. Now, here's the great thing about.
So we're talking hundreds would do it. You don't need thousands.
Yeah, I don't need thousands, I don't think. No, 200 or 300 people back in this game, we're going to make it happen.
Okay, let's.
And that, a lot of that is because, again, I've been working on it for about 5 years now, and I've invested, a significant amount of my own money that if I can recoup that through the Kickstarter, great. But I'm not necessarily expecting that. At this point, what I'm looking for to actually successfully fund and mass produce this game is the manufacturing cost, right? What it takes to actually manufacture the game and pay for freight and kind of get things rolling. As far as all the artwork and everything that's been invested up to this, to get it to here, that's water under the bridge as far as I'm concerned. If I can recoup it, that's great, but I'm not including any of that in the price because the artwork's done. Right. So the game is essentially finished. I'm tweaking and polishing and need to do some proofreading yet on the rules, but basically it's ready.
Where'd you find your artist?
You know what? I found most of them through Fiverr. And they're from all over the place. So Jared Bender, and he's from Canada, he did a lot of the artwork that you see. The beautiful landscape and stuff that's on the board, the backs of the cards, and the design of a lot of the cards. He's the one that helped with that. And then I also had an Italian artist, Alberto Macari. He did the creatures. And so I've got some stuff from Canada. I've got some stuff from Italy, and actually even on the cover of the box, a gentleman by the name of Ivan Earl Aguilar from the Philippines did the demon that you see on the cover.
Oh, so, okay. Yeah.
A lot of sources, but most of them I found through Fiverr.
All right, so Joe, what would be the best way for someone to connect with this game to get involved?
Yeah, so actually there's a couple avenues depending on what the degree of involvement. Honestly, I hope that everybody that sees this wants to play the game and wants to back it. So going to the Kickstarter is great. But currently I've got mysticforces.com. You're going to see a lot about the actual RPG and products there if you're interested in that. As far as the board game goes, though, I think probably your best bets about gaining some information on it is going to be BoardGameGeek, number one. You can look me up on there. There's some good videos on there and some good information. And then I would definitely like folks to join my Discord server. So if you go to discord.noblequests.com, that's the actual custom invite link into my Discord server. Jump on there and say hi. And there's a lot of sneak peeks. There's a lot of good information on there. I post links on there. And certainly you can, ask questions in there to me, and I'll answer them for you and share information that way.
Joe, I appreciate you coming on. I really want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, I wanted to talk to you for a long time because ever since we, had a chance to sit down and play this game, it's, really been on my top of mind. And I encourage anyone out there watching this to definitely check it out.
I appreciate it, guys. I enjoyed talking to you, and good seeing your faces again. Enjoyed it as always.
I've never heard that before. That's excellent.
Come on now.
And we're going to provide the links down there for Discord for the Kickstarter. Go check this one out. We really enjoyed it at Gen Con, just to echo Jay here. And it's worth your time. And I'm definitely I'm one of those followers on Kickstarter for sure. I'm waiting for it to kick off. So,
I appreciate it. I really do.
All right. Well, for Jason and myself, thanks again to Joe, and we will see you on the next edition of Inside Board Games.